Hi everybody. Now we shall learn about the skeleton of the hand. Now the skeleton of the hand we will learn in three different steps. In the first video I will tell you about the carpal bones. In second video I will cover the metacarpal bones, and lastly the phalanges. Let us see the parts of the skeleton of the hand. Here you can see that this is the lower end of the radius, this is the lower end of the ulna. At the postomedial side you can see the presence of this stellate process of the ulna at its lower end. Now after this lower end, these are the 8 carpal bones, and these 8 carpal bones, they are arranged in 2 rows, a proximal row and a distal row of the 4 bones. Okay, so proximal row consists of 4 bones, distal row consists of the 4 bones. After these carpal bones, these are the 5 metacarpal. This is the first metacarpal, okay, which has the 2 phalanges here for the thumb. This is the metacarpal of the index finger, metacarpal of the middle finger, then ring finger, and the metacarpal of the little fingers. Now for the index, middle, ring and little finger, there are 3 phalanges each, okay, which forms the skeleton of our fingers, while metacarpals, they form the skeleton of our palm, and the carpal bones in 2 rows, they form the skeleton of our wrist. Okay. Now if you see this carpal bone here, the articulated skeleton of the hand, you will see that this side is the radial side or the lateral side of the hand. Okay, this is the radial side because the radius is located here, and this side is the ulnar side or the medial side. So this is the medial side of the hand, and this is the lateral side of the hand, which is called as the lateral or radial, and here it is called as medial or the ulnar. This aspect of the hand which you are seeing is from the palmar aspect or the ventral aspect. Okay, if I turn this skeleton of the hand, okay, backside, then this aspect is the dorsal aspect of the hand. Okay, so there are 2 aspects of the hands. Now we come to the first part, okay, of the hand skeleton, and this is carpal bone. So now I will deal in this video about the carpal bone. As I said, this carpal bones are irregular small bones. Okay, these irregular small bones, they are arranged in a proximal row of 4 bones and distal row again of the 4 bones. Let us see what are the carpal bones which are present in proximal row and which are present in distal row. I will little zoom this, so now we concentrate mostly onto the carpal bones. Okay, just a little more zooming, and I hope that this is okay. You can see the proximal row. So I will tell you the bones which forms the proximal row and which articulates most of these bones, they articulate with the lower end of the radius and ulna to form the carpal joint. Now this bone which you are seeing is the scaphoid bone, and it articulates on its proximal surface with that of the distal end of the radius. So this is the scaphoid bone. We are just showing you the bones, carpal bones from radial to medial side, okay, or lateral to the medial side. This bone is the second bone, that is called as the lunate. Okay, this is the lunate bone. Then there is a bone here hidden behind this bone, which is sesamoid bone, called as the pisiform. Just behind that is the third bone, that is called as the triquetral. Okay, this is called as triquetral, and on the top of triquetral there is an overriding bone, sesamoid, called as the pisiform. So there are 4 bones in proximal row: scaphoid, lunate, triquetral and pisiform. In the distal row, try to see again from the radial side or lateral side this bone which articulates with that of the first metacarpal bone. This bone is called as trapezium. And then this bone here, just medial to trapezium, the small one is trapezoid. This is called as trapezoid. And then the large bone, carpal bone here, this is called as capitate. So the third bone in the distal row is the capitate, and here is the fourth bone here of the distal row is called as the hamate. Okay, this is the hamate bone. So these are the four bones of the distal row. Okay. Now if you will see the articular surfaces of this carpal bone of the proximal row, you will see that this is the convexity which is pointing towards the proximal side. So these bones of the proximal row, they form a convex surface for the articulation with the lower end of the radius and ulna, and their distal surface of this proximal row. Okay, if you will see, this is the concavity distally they form. But on the other hand, if you will see the four bones of distal row, roughly they are also convex proximally. But when you will show their distal surfaces, all these four bones of the distal row, they are almost horizontal. I mean to say they lie in the almost same line. Okay, same line. Now, since these are the carpal bones which are small and they will show so many articular surfaces, so many facets for articulation in between the carpal bones themselves, with the articulation with the base of the metacarpals, then articulation with the distal end of the radius and ulna. So these bones are highly articular on their many surfaces, okay, on many surfaces. But remember that the medial surface of pisiform and this trapezium, I mean say not trapezium, triquetral, pisiform and triquetral, and the medial surface of the hamate, they are non-articular. So medial aspect of this row, I mean say bones of proximal and distal row on their medial aspect, pisiform, triquetral and this hamate, they are non-articular. That means there is no articular facet. Similarly, the scaphoid and trapezium on their medial surface, they have no articular facet. Okay. Similarly, the articular facet are absent from the ventral aspect of this carpal bone, except in triquetral, which articulates with the pisiform bone. Otherwise, they are non-articular. If you will see the dorsal aspect of these carpal bones, this as the larger surface is seen in the dorsal aspect, larger surface as compared to that of the ventral or palmar surface, okay, on the palmar aspect or the ventral aspect, where narrow surface were seen on this surface, but on the dorsal surface shows a large area. And all this dorsal aspect of all these bones are also non-articular. Okay, that means they don't show the presence of any facet. Okay. Now let us see. I will not go into the details of identification of individual bone, as was the case when I was the student. We were supposed to identify the right bone and the left bone. Okay, so no site determination I am going to teach you. Because of the advancements of technology, MRI, CT scan, or even the good quality of X-ray, okay, they don't need you to understand the anatomical position, because in an articulated hand, which you will see in an X-ray, already you will see the various articulation which an individual makes with it. But briefly I will tell you some of the features of these carpal bones. Okay, now let us see this carpal bone, that is the scaphoid. Now this scaphoid is boat shape. Okay, this scaphoid is boat shaped structure, and it has a laterally directed tubercle. Okay, that is the tubercle of scaphoid is here and it is directed onto the lateral side. Let us see here. This is the scaphoid, the first bone of the proximal row, lateral bone. This is a boat-shaped structure, and this is here its tubercle. That is the lateral tubercle. The tubercle of the scaphoid directed on the radial side or laterally. So this is the scaphoid bone. Then if you will see the hamate bone, it has a moon-shaped articular surface, crescentric articular surface. That's why it is called loon, which you may not appreciate when these are all articulated, they are articulating with each other. But when you will see the individual bone, it can be identified lunate, which I said you may not need at all. Now then, there is a third bone, triquetral bone, which is pyramidal in shape. Let us see if we can see the pyramid shape of the triquetral bone. Okay, right from the lateral medial surface, we are seeing this triquetral bone from the medial surface, and you can see this is a pyramidal shaped bone. And on the ventral aspect, on the top of this triquetral bone, this small bone pisiform is sitting, okay, making an articulation on ventral. So this is the fourth bone called as pisiform bone, okay. It is P-shaped like a P, okay. And on its medial lateral aspect, not on medial, if you see the medial aspect of this pisiform bone, just beneath this, this wire here, and there is a groove, and this groove is for that of the ulnar nerve, okay. Ulnar. Let us come to the bone of the distal row. We will see the bones of distal row. Now the first bone in the distal row, right from the lateral side to the medial side, if you will see this is called as trapezium, and trapezium bone will show the presence of a ridge on its dorsal, on its ventral aspect. See, this is the ventral aspect, okay, of the carpal bones, anterior surface, and there is a hook-like projection. See this is a raised ridge, okay, and this sometimes is also called as the tubercle of the trapezium, okay, and just medial to this raised ridge or the tubercle, there is a groove seen. Can you see this groove here? Okay, let me show it in light. Yes, this is a groove onto the medial side of this raised ridge, okay. Now this has a articulation with that of the base of the first metacarpal of the thumb, okay, and this articulation is the saddle type. That means the surface which articulates with the base of the metacarpal is concavo-convex. That means it is concave in this direction, proximal to distal, but it is convex from side to side. So this is a saddle variety of the joint which it will form with the base of the thumb, okay. So this is the the first bone, that is called as the trapezium. Then you will see the another small bone here interposed between the trapezium and the capitate. This is capitate, which is the largest bone, the largest carpal bone, and has a rounded structure looking like a cape. That's why it is called as capitate, okay. This bone, second one, is trapezoid. This is called as trapezoid, which is a small bone. And if you will see from its dorsal aspect, the trapezoid bone, you will see that it is quite big one, okay. See this is quite big, okay. And then this bone, if you will see an isolated bone, disarticulated bone, then this trapezoid, it looks like the boot of a baby, okay. It looks like this is the narrow, and that this expanded part here was that of the sole of the boot, okay. So this is the trapezoid. Then we come to the third bone, which is called as capitate, and as I said that this is the largest bone, okay, largest bone of the largest carpal bone, okay, and it has a head shape, rounded heads, which articulates with the other carpal bone, okay. This is the capitate. Then last bone of the distal row, which is on medial side, is the hamate, okay, because it has the hook-like structure on its ventral surface. I will just turn it and you can see the hamate here. I mean, say hook of the hamate. See this? Projecting ventrally. This is a hook-like projection, which is called as the hook of the hamate, seen from the medial side, and this hook of the hamate seen from that of the lateral side. Okay, this is from the lateral side, right? This is, so this is the hamate bone, right? Okay, now this is easily identified. The hamate bone is easily identified because it is having a hook-like projection, okay, onto its ventral aspect. If you will see this hamate bone from the dorsal side, you can see it is a wedge-shaped bone. Yes, very well. It is seen that it is forming a wedge. Okay, so this is the hamate bone. Now, after knowing some of the features of these carpal bones, okay, and their names, let us move to the some of the articulations, okay, which are only, I will touch only the important articulation. Okay, now if you see the articulation of the scaphoid, this is the proximal surface of the scaphoid, which is convex, and it articulates with that of the lower end of the radius, okay, where there was a triangular facet near the stellate process, medial to stellate, that will articulate with the scaphoid. Okay, so this is the articulation of the scaphoid proximal surface with the distal surface of the radius. There will be the other articulation. We are not going in much details about the other articulation, but important articulation you should remember, this is with that of the scaphoid. Then we come to the articulation, important articulation with that of the lunate. And since this is slightly deviated towards the medial side, but this proximal surface of the lunate bone here, which I am just tracing with the tip of the pencil, this will articulate with another articular surface or the distal end of the radius. So this scaphoid and lunate, they articulate with the radius, okay, on the under surface of the or inferior surface of the radius. Then the triquetral bone, the third bone is the triquetral, and this has an articular surface, a small articular surface, this one. See this? This is a small articular surface of the triquetral, which will also take part in formation of the wrist joint. But then this will not articulate with any bone, but it will articulate with the triangular articular disc, which is placed on the under surface of the ulna, okay, lower end of the ulna, or on the head of the ulna, on this under surface. Okay, this triangular disc is attached here, whose apex is on the base of this stellate process, and its base of the articular disc is onto the margin of the ulnar notch of the radius, onto the margin of the ulnar notch of the radius. So this is separated from the under surface. That articular disc is separating the under surface or inferior surface of the ulna from that of the triquetral, okay, from the triquetral. So these are the major articulation. Pisiform bone only articulates with the triquetral, not to anyone else. So this is the wrist joint, how it is formed, with the help of three proximal carpal bones, okay, and the lower surface or inferior surface of the radius and ulna separating it. Ulna is separated by the articular cartilaginous disc, triangular in nature. Okay, let us go to the important articulation with that of the trapezium. Okay, the trapezium articulates. Here you have seen that this is the first bone of the distal row, and this trapezium articulates with the proximal end of the metacarpal, first metacarpal, base of the first metacarpal, to form the saddle joint. That is another important articulation of the trapezium. Okay, so this is At the other side, the trapezium also articulates with the second base of the second metacarpal. See here, this articulation, part of the second metacarpal is RC. Not only it is articulating with first, but it also articulates with the second metacarpal bone. Right? Then come to the trapezoid, and trapezoid articulates with the second metacarpal, base of the second metacarpal bones only here. Now, the capitate, which is the largest bone, okay, carpal bone, it articulates with the three metacarpal, bases of three metacarpal. Which are these? Second base, see here, this articulation, then with the third metacarpal and part of the fourth metacarpals. They articulate with that of the distal articular surface of the capitate. Okay, the proximal articulates with the scaphite and the lunate. Okay, scaphite and lunate. Now, coming to the last distal bone of distal row, it articulates with the fourth and the fifth. Let me just tilt it so you can see this articulation. See, this is the hook of the hamate, so it is hamate bone. It articulates here with the fourth, and this is also articulating with the fifth metacarpal bone. So these are the important articulation among the carpal bones and with the proximal ends of the metacarpal bones. Similarly, with the distal end of the radius and that of the ulna. Okay, I hope that this much is enough for you to understand about the carpal bones. Now let us come to the attachment of these 8 carpal bones, okay? And most of the attachment are given by the bones which are present in the lateral margin, that is scaphide and the trapezium. And here pisiform and the hamate. These are the bones which are present on lateral side as well as on medial side. Now, there is an important structure what is called as flexor retinaculum. It is attached to this ridge of the trapezium and to the tubercle of the scaphide. So to the ridge and to the the groove which was here in trapezium, both the margin of this groove, they give attachment to the lateral end of the flexor retinaculum by splitting into two. And through this splitted part, okay, from the groove itself passes an important tendon called as the flexor carpi radialis. Okay, so it is passing into between the two slips of the flexor retinaculum, which are attached onto the margin of it. So this is the flexor carpi radialis tendon which passes. So where is the medial end of the flexor retinaculum attached? Onto the tubercle of scaphide and onto both the ridges of both the margins of the groove of the trapezium. Okay. So this is the medial attachment of the flexor retinaculum. Let us see the lateral attachment of flexor retinaculum. This is attached onto the tip of the hook of the hamate here and onto the pisiform bone. So this is the medial attachment of the flexor retinaculum. And this flexor retinaculum is a strong fibrous band which is the modification of the deep fascia, as I have told you in the general anatomy when I was teaching you the deep fascia modifications. And deep to this flexor retinaculum, through which passes the tendons of the long flexors, that is flexor digitorum superficially, flexor digitorum profundus, etc. Thus it forms an osteofibrous tunnel here, okay, deep to this. Let us come to some of the attachment onto the muscles, muscular attachment. We will see the attachment of the tubercle of scaphide means most of this attachment which are going, the muscles, short muscles which are going to the base of the thumb, okay, these are the attached to the ridge of the trapezium. They are it is attached to the rib. And what are these muscles? These are the three muscles: abductor pollicis longus, brevis. Abductor pollicis brevis, okay, that muscle abductor which abduct the thumb, okay, away from the median plane, and median plane is passing through the middle finger. So this thumb is abducted. That is attached to tubercle. A very small contribution, per major contribution comes from the reach of the trapezium. So it is abductor pollicis brevis. I will show you the diagram in this in the atlas. Abductor pollicis brevis. The two other muscle which takes origin from this surface of the trapezium, they are it is the abductor pollicis brevis also, but then there are the opponens pollicis and the flexor pollicis brevis. Opponens pollicis and the flexor pollicis brevis. So these are the three muscles which takes origin mainly from trapezius, okay, because abductor pollicis brevis, flexor pollicis brevis and opponens pollicis, okay, these are the three muscles which takes origin from trapezium. A part of the abductor pollicis brevis also arises from the tubercle of the scaphoid. Then these three muscles of the little finger, they are taking origin from pisiform, and pisiform gives origin to the abductor digiti minimi, which abduct the little finger, abductor. While the other two muscles of this little finger, just like thumb, they take origin, these are called as flexor digiti minimi, which flexes, okay, the little finger, flexor digiti minimis, and then it is opponens digiti. So in the similar way as it was for thumb, there are three muscles which are taking origin from the hook of the hamate, two muscle, and from the pisiform bone, one muscle. Pisiform, abductor digiti minimi. Pisiform is abductor digiti minimi, hook of the hamate, flexor digiti minimi, and opponens digiti minimi. Okay, we have also learned that the lateral surface of the pisiform bone gives passage to the ulnar nerve, right? So these are the attachment of the carpal bones beside the flexor retinaculum, Now I think I should show you these muscles which were attached onto the thumb and the little finger, okay, from the atlas. Now again, this is the atlas of Thieme by Gilroy and published by Thieme. So I thank them for using this atlas to show you. Now let us see let you see the whole picture first, okay? This is the palmar surface of the skeleton, and this skeleton which I have shown you was also from the right side, and this diagram is also from the right side, so there should not be any problem. Now beside these three muscles, there is one muscle, big muscle is present, called as the adductor pollicis, transverse and oblique head, which we will discuss in the next video. You just see the three muscles. This is the opponens pollicis, okay? This muscle is here, which is attaching on to the first metacarpal shaft, okay? So this is the opponens pollicis muscle. Then this is the fusion of the, here is this muscle will be its lateral part is the flexor pollicis brevis, and it is a superficial head. So this muscle is the flexor pollicis brevis, and then this muscle which is on the flexor or ventral surface of the first metacarpal, this is abductor pollicis brevis. Most of these muscles are coming from, this is from the trapezium they are coming. Some of the fibers may come from the capitate, but trapezium is the main source of this muscle, except that few fibers may come from the tubercle of the scaphoid also. And this is the flexor pollicis, brevis muscle, okay? Abductor pollicis brevis muscle, right? In the similar way, you see the muscles attach onto the little finger, okay, for little finger. These are two muscles. This is the hook of the hamate, deep to it. This is the hook of hamate, and this is the pisiform bone covered by this tissue of origin of this muscle. So the pisiform bone gives origin to this muscle called as abductor digiti minimi, while the hook of the hamate gives these two muscles. It is opponens digiti minimi and flexor digiti minimi. So these are the small muscles on the palmar aspect, okay, of taking origin mainly from the carpal bones. Now let me tell you about the about the ossification. Okay, so ossification of this small carpal bones, I will just draw here and will tell you. Now, in the proximal row, say for example, this is scaphoid, then this is lunate, then this is triquetral, and then this is a small pisiform bone. Okay, let me show you. Yes, I have drawn it here. This is the pisiform bone. This is the scaphoid, lunate, triquetral, and pisiform bone. Okay. Now the ossification center of these bones appears in cartilage at various ages. Okay. For example, in the proximal row, the first to ossify in proximal row is this triquetral bone, which center for which appears in the 3rd week of intrauterine life. Okay. Then for lunate, the 4th year is not week, it is 4. In the 3rd year for triquetral, the 4th year for lunate, and for scaphoid, it is the 5th year. Okay, it is 5th year of life. And for pisiform, it is 12th year. Okay, in the 12th year of life. When we go to the distal attachment, row, this is the trapezium, this is trapezoid, okay, and this is the capitate, and this will be the hamate. In the distal row, again the centers which will appear after birth, it is the hamate and that of the capitate. It is the 1st year, okay, the 1st year, both capitate and hamate, the center will appear in the 1st year. Then for trapezium, this will be appearing into the 5th year, and trapezoid also the 5th year. So the first center for carpal bones to appear is the 1st year of life, and that is for hamate and capitate. It is for hamate and capitate. So before 1 year of age, if you will take an X-ray, nothing will be seen in the wrist area. Then the 2 dots, white dot will appear at the end of the 1st year. Then for this triquetral in the 3rd year, then lunate in the 4th year, and then for 5th year, 3 bones will appear together. That is scaphoid, trapezium, trapezoid, and lastly it will be pisiform. If you are seeing only 7 dots or 7 ossified areas, then your patient is below 12 years of age. Okay, that means he is somewhere between 5th to the 12 years. That is the importance of knowing the age of a child from seeing the carpal bones, okay, from seeing. Now lastly I come to the applied importance, what is called as avascular necrosis of a scaphoid. If we see the scaphoid of the right side itself, this is the tubercle and this is the boat shape, the scaphoid, okay, seen from the palmar surface. So this is the tubercle, which is non-articular, okay, and this is articular surface for the radius, and this articular surface is for that of the capitate mainly. And then the blood supply of this is from the tubercle. An artery comes from its lateral side and pierce the tubercle and supply it. So, an artery may come also on the dorsal aspect, okay, which is from the medial half of the body. So if, for example, this is going on to the dorsal aspect, medial half of the body. Now usually during the fracture of the scaphoid, which is very common in outstretched hand, if you fall down, you are playing in the ground and all of a sudden you fall down, and after that, because you are falling on the outstretched hand, you try to just put your hand, stretched hand onto the ground, so the forces they go, okay, through the scaphoid, and these forces may break scaphoid, okay, from the body, in the region of the body, so that the blood supply which is coming from tubercle, that is lateral side, towards the medial aspect of the body or medial side of the body from dorsal aspect. Also, this will interfere with the blood supply of the medial half of the body. This is the medial side, this is lateral side, that is radial side, and this is ulnar side. This medial half of the body of the scaphoid will not get any blood, okay, and because of that this portion will get necrose or will die, okay. This is called as avascular necrosis of the scaphoid bone. I hope this is enough for you people, okay. Thank you very much.